What is the scariest thing you have ever experienced? In my old job, I used to cycle home from work along the country back roads just before midnight. There were no street lights along those roads and I hated cycling on the main road because I was anxious about being in the way of traffic. I had a LED light that was fixed to the front of my bike, though. Anyway, I was on my way back home from work one night, and after turning a corner, my light shone on someone who was sitting with their legs crossed in the middle of the road. The guy was just sitting there in complete silence and darkness by himself. I pulled on the brakes and stopped in front of him and asked if he was alright. He just looked at me and said that he'd trying to get to a location that was approximately 20 miles or so from where we currently were. I told him that, and he said that he knew and that he was waiting for someone else. Then he got up and walked off into one of the nearby fields without saying anything. I had another encounter with this same person a week later in the exact same spot. It honestly gave me the freaking creeps, especially when he said that he'd found who he was looking for. Turns out the guy was waiting for a specific car to drive that way. The owner of said car was someone he loved, but was with someone else, and he was planning to kidnap her. I found this out when I saw his face in one of the local newspapers not long after this incident. He'd been arrested for sexual assault and attempted murder. Amphetamine-induced psychosis. I spent a period of time addicted to crystal meth, and the psychosis one goes through after having not slept for days at a time is scary. You see shadow people. You believe everyone is out to get you. Every conversation out of your earshot is about you. Your delusions become very real. At one point there were leprechauns that were out to kill me. I saw the leprechauns. I heard them whispering and plotting against me. It's insane. I'm so glad that's in the past. When I was in high school about 10 years ago, I was home alone while my mom went to pick up my brother, and before my mom left she told me to bring the dogs in. Now we had two beagles, one that was friendly but barked loud and an older one that we had gotten from the shelter was extremely protective and was not afraid to show his teeth. I ignored her and left them outside for a bit. I was in the back part of the house and was on the computer when I heard a noise. I walked to our front room and saw a young guy near the front door who knocked. I stood slightly out of sight and saw him walk near our window and then back to the door and knocked again but also tried the door. Immediately, my blood went cold and I rushed to the back door and quietly yelled for the dogs to come in. They ran in and I herded them to the front room and I heard the mailbox slot open. Right away my older beagle got on the defensive and growled the "I'm gonna fucking bite you" growl while the other one barked. I got my phone and called my mom and begged her to come back home, which she did with my brother. They looked around and saw no other signs of entry. I triple check every door now, and even though those two dogs have passed away, I keep our current dog near me when home alone. I choked on a piece of bacon that wasn't fully cooked. Had to physically shove my hand to the back of my throat and yank it out cause it was so stuck. Coughing didn't work and I was starting to see stars. It's been over a decade since and I still don't eat bacon unless it's borderline burnt. I used to do some urban exploring, but not so much anymore. Probably the freakiest experience I've had was when I was at an abandoned factory with a friend in a rougher part of town. We had been through most of the building at that point and not run into anybody. I've only ever occasionally bumped into other explorers and that's it. As we were about to leave, we heard a loud clang hitting the concrete from somewhere behind us and the sounds of footsteps taking off deeper into the building towards a distant exit. Since the footsteps had moved away and I was with my friend, I hurried over to see what made the noise. I discovered a rusty crowbar laying on the floor which I hadn't seen when we had been in that area earlier. My guess was someone was planning on robbing us or attacking us, but had mistakenly dropped the crowbar and they took off. I had wondered if they had been following us around and how long they'd been doing so, waiting for the perfect opportunity to ambush us. Whether or not they were planning on doing something. Someone with a rusty crowbar in an abandoned building in a bad part of town isn't exactly a good sign. Of course, we got the fuck out of there because we were convinced that whoever had just bolted might be trying to get more people to go wait at the exits for us to come out. Sure, that was more paranoia than anything. But until we were safely away from that building and back in the car, I was pretty shook up. Driving down the freeway near American Falls, towing my travel trailer. Guy getting on the freeway and I could see he had his cell phone glued to the side of his head and he wasn't paying attention to traffic. He was going to plow into me if I didn't change lanes, but I really didn't want to as there was ice on the freeway and staying in the far right lane was the safer option. He ended up pushing me over into the left lane. I honked and he gave me a shrug and a what? Look. Just then, the trailer lost traction as it hit some ice, just as a gust of wind caught it. We ended up doing a full 720 spin as I fought to keep the truck upright, but I could feel it wanting to roll over. I remember feeling the truck wanting to roll and going over the options of fighting the roll or just letting it happen and hoping it wouldn't hurt much. It just happened that in wintertime, I'd take the truck to an iced over and empty parking lot and do donuts for fun and practice handling skids. The trailer ended up rolling 2 or 3 times and was completely destroyed. Cops said I was either a really good driver or the luckiest fucker they've ever seen to be able to keep the truck upright after getting spun around twice. I was at a buddy's place. Said dude left to go do something, and in the time he was gone there was a knock at the door. I answered it, and it was 2 guys. They asked if said dude was here, and I said no, but that they could come in and wait till he got back. They came in and pulled out guns. It was a long night and is quite a story. If there is a moral to this story, it's don't answer the door if the actual person living there isn't there. One day me and a friend were playing in the woods. We spent a good 3 to 4 hours there because it was sunny and a day before Christmas Eve. I realized I forgot something there the next day. It's now Christmas Eve and it snowed a whole inch overnight. As I'm walking to the spot where we were, I noticed that someone set up in a previously trashed area that someone probably camped in 5 expensive foldable chairs in a semicircle with a ladder and a noose in the middle. I bolted out of there because if someone is crazy enough to set that up in the middle of the night when it's snowing on Christmas Eve, then they might have still been there waiting for someone. I was 21 working the overpass shift at a 24-hour pharmacy when a guy ran in with a ski mask and gun and robbed the store. He made me get on the ground and took my coworker to all the registers and empty them into bag, then ran out and jumped into a getaway car and drove off. Still had to finish my shift after that too. He and his accomplices were arrested a couple weeks later and he did 6 years in prison for armed robbery. I got a notification in the mail from the state when he was released. Gee, thanks. I got a call from a unsolicited number. I answered and it was a guy saying he was going to come to my dorm room and kill me. He then went into graphic detail about how he would do it. He went on about it for like 5 minutes before I finally hung up. He then called again and I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail. I called the police and it was a person out in Vegas. They said it was a prank. So many questions still. How did they know my name? How did they know I was in a dorm? I was super on edge for the remainder of that semester. Glitch in the Matrix. I had one a few years ago. I was driving from visiting friends in a city about 1.5 hours away. I wasn't on any drugs, wasn't tired in the slightest when I started the drive, and was nursing a Red Bull to boot. I blinked and was an hour north. The time matched up, but I'd gone from driving under the Ashland Bridge to coming into Macedonia an hour north instantly. There is zero way I fell asleep. I'm really not sure how to explain it other than missing time. I consider myself a rational person. Of course, most people would believe that of themselves, however objective they try to be. This is something that happened to me and a friend around 18 years ago. I was hanging out with him and his cousin in his new house. This was a somewhat busy area near to a major commercial center. At around 9 PM we decided to take a walk to a convenience store for food. His cousin decided to stay at the house. It took us 30 minutes to get to the store. There was a fair amount of vehicular and pedestrian traffic. On the way back we both started getting this really weird feeling. It's hard to describe now, but both of our experiences matched up when discussing it later on. It felt like the air was much lighter, thinner. The street seemed odd somehow, out of place. All of a sudden there were no cars or people around. Everything went dead silent. This continued for a few minutes and we both started walking faster. What freaks me out to this day and what I could never explain is this: both our watches stopped working. My digital and his analog. His watch stopped at 9:41 PM. He was later able to get it fixed. Mine was dead for good. When we got back to the house, it was minutes to 11 and his cousin was freaking out. We were gone for an hour longer than we were meant to. There was no way we could have taken that long to get back. If anything, we walked faster than we did getting to the store. It's something I usually don't like thinking or talking about. Neither does my friend for that matter. Thank you for watching the video. Here is a picture of a dog. Good boy. Do you have any similar experiences? Post them in the comments below. And subscribe if you enjoyed this vid. Also check out our other videos.